As a millennial, when it comes to Western cartoons, I'd argue its peak was in the 90s to early 2000s. And one reason for this era's greatness was the influx of iconic female characters from shows like Sailor Moon, Winx Club, Totally Spies, Teen Titans, etc. But one show that is quintessential when talking about well-written female characters is Avatar the Last Airbender, with characters such as Toph, Azula, and Katara. However, out of all these characters of that era, I'd argue that Katara is at the top of the list for most iconic and influential. And the reason I say this is because of the way she embraces her soft femininity, but also shows her ferocity. And this duality makes Katara very interesting. And this may sound redundant, as I've already made 2 videos discussing this topic, but it must be re-emphasized. Katara's versatility is the reason as to why she's the anchor for Team Avatar, and why her character journey is beloved by fans. So, with that being said, when adapting such a beloved character, it must be done with deliberation. But by this video's title, you can probably tell that I was disappointed in Netflix's mishandling of Katara's character. Now, to highlight Netflix's failure, it's important to analyze and compare both Katara's introductions from the cartoon and Netflix. This way, by analyzing each introduction, we'll uncover key aspects of both characters. For example, in the cartoon's first scene, we learn a lot about Katara. For starters, as she's stranded with Sokka, she grows frustrated at him for neglecting her orders and making sexist remarks. And as Katara reprimands Sokka, in her rage, she inadvertently surfaces Aang's iceberg. So, with this sequence, we are shown that Katara is the more responsible sibling, and because of the loss of their mother, she acts as Sokka's parent. Secondly, when Sokka tries to undermine Katara, she confidently stands up for herself and expresses her frustrations. And thirdly, in her rage, we see Katara's immense power as she inadvertently causes Aang's iceberg to surface. Furthermore, when Team Avatar visits the Southern Air Temple, Aang is hopeful to see the remnants of his people. But throughout their visitation, Katara tries to protect Aang from finding out about his people's eradication. However, Katara's efforts fail as Aang traumatically discovers Mongiatsu's corpse and goes into the Avatar state. Fortunately, Katara calms Aang down with comforting words, leading Aang to lament in Katara's arms. Therefore, in these 2 instances, we grasp the pillars of Katara's character. She's a caretaker, confident, ferocious, and due to having strong empathy, is adept at reasoning with people. And with Katara's multifaceted personality, she's not only a great character, but also is very influential to other characters. This is why I previously stated that Katara is the anchor of Team Avatar. And with a character this important, it's imperative that she be treated with the utmost care. So, in live action, Katara's journey starts the same, but one difference is Katara's dynamic with Sokka. See, in this relationship, Katara is not the responsible sibling. Instead, Sokka is placed as the authority figure. But what's even more different is, when Sokka belittles Katara, she barely stands up for herself, showing low confidence. Also, Katara's powerful waterbending is not displayed either, as she struggles to elevate a bubble. So, the problem with this introduction is that Katara looks weaker than her cartoon counterpart. And by Katara shrinking down to Sokka's authority and not displaying the power she had in the cartoon, Netflix's Katara appears inferior. Furthermore, in live action, when Aang activates his Avatar state, he's not calmed down by Katara. Instead, Aang is calmed by Mongiatsu's words. Therefore, by removing this act of Katara's and by altering Katara's dynamic with Sokka, I'd have to describe Katara's character as passive. She lacks autonomy, and her confidence from the cartoon is absent. Hence, in live action, Katara's character is diluted, and unfortunately, this dilution of Katara's character is furthered by her interactions with other characters. In the cartoon, Katara was integral to Aang's journey, to help him in times of need and to help him learn waterbending. However, in live action, this relationship doesn't exist. Instead, Katara never waterbends with Aang, and throughout their relationship, Aang behaves more like Katara's mentor than friend. See, in the first episode, Katara laments to Aang about her struggles with waterbending, which leads Aang to give her advice. And upon hearing it, Katara's bending improves instantly.
The monks told me bending is about energy and balance. By feeling the energy around you, you can find balance. By finding balance, you can feel the energy.
And this instance also reoccurs in episode 3 when Katara still struggles in her waterbending.
Basic bending forms are mostly just physical movement. But when you get into the harder moves, like the water whip, you really need to reach inside and feel the energy flow.
Now, the problem with these two scenes is that there's some of the very few scenes where Aang and Katara interact with each other. We barely see them goof off or do anything fun. Instead, most of their interactions consist of Aang lecturing Katara. And because we barely see them do anything else outside these lectures, Aang comes across more of a teacher to Katara than a friend. But another scene that emphasizes this disparity is during the feast at the Northern Water Tribe. See, after a long journey, Aang thanks Katara for being there for him, to which Katara replies that she should be thanking him instead, and further states that she wouldn't have seen the world without him.
Katara, I just want to say thanks for helping me get here. I wouldn't have missed it for the world. A world I wouldn't have seen if it wasn't for you.
Now, Katara's comment can be seen as her being modest, but I'm confused because why is Katara thanking Aang for something that was her idea? It was Katara who freed Aang from his 100-year slumber. It was Katara's idea to bring Aang to Wolf's Cove, and it was Katara's idea to accompany Aang on his journey when he was all alone. So, if anyone should get the credit for Team Avatar making it this far, it should be Katara. And because of the aforementioned scenes of Aang's lessons, Katara seems more like a fan of Aang who's dependent on him.
It's about more than just helping Aang. Ever since he came into our lives, things have changed for me. Before I met him, I couldn't bend enough water to fill a thimble. And now look what I can do. And that's after a single day. You have to give people something to live for. That's what the Avatar is. He's hope. And we need that just as much as we need food and shelter. I know I do.
It's been so long since I've had hope, but you brought it back to life, my little waterbender.
And because of scenes like these, Aang is propped up and Katara is made to be lesser. And this is ironic because in the cartoon, Aang was the one who was more dependent on Katara as he developed an unrequited crush on her.
Now, how do I look? You mean all of you or just your neck? I mean, because both look great.
Smoochy, smoochy, someone's in love.
And in addition, when Aang wanted to gain control of his avatar state, he struggled because he refused to let go of his love for Katara. Therefore, in live action, Katara and Aang's relationship loses its liveliness as Katara is portrayed as being more of Aang's fan, and with the removal of Aang's crush on Katara, this relationship becomes less interesting. Next we have Katara's relationship with Jet. Now, the beginning of this relationship isn't bad. The two meet at the gates of Amashu, have playful banter, and go their separate ways. And later on, Katara and the freedom fighters take down Fire Nation Spies. However, Katara's character begins to get compromised once Jet helps Katara get over a mental hurdle that hinders her waterbending.
affecting my bending?
I don't know anything about bending, but I do know that you have to use everything inside you to help you fight.
And upon taking Jet's advice, Katara's waterbending instantly improves. But the reason as to why this scene is problematic is because, just like the instances with Aang, this scene robs Katara of her autonomy, as she doesn't learn any lessons on her own. Instead, whenever she struggles, she complains about it until either Aang or Jet say something deep to help her overcome her obstacle. Now, there's nothing wrong with a character needing help from others. But in this case, when all of her problems are solved by receiving a pep talk from others, Katara looks weak. And later, when Jet and Katara fight, Jet takes credit for Katara's newfound power. However, Katara denies his claim and takes all the credit for herself.
Look at the power you have. That's because of me.
That wasn't you. That was me.
But this is a blatant lie. And although this scene was made to empower Katara, it ended up disempowering her instead, as it was just advice that helped her achieve her new powers. So, by Katara taking credit for Jet's help, she ends up looking foolish, especially because later, she admits to Sokka what Jet claimed earlier.
You're getting good at that.
Practice and some good instruction.
Yeah, from the scroll.
Yeah. And Jet, he helped me through some things.
Now, we must discuss the worst relationship in this entire show, Katara and Sokka. So, as I previously mentioned, in the first episode, Sokka was more authoritative in their relationship and would belittle Katara every time she challenged his authority.
Reporting everything.
You're wrong.
This is just like you, Katara. Willing to believe anything as long as it helps you.
This is just like you. Never believing anything I say. I'm so sick of you treating me like I'm a little girl.
Then grow up.
Listening to the minstrels? Sokka, wait.
Katara, what is your problem?
My problem is you're not taking me seriously.
This again.
I'm not a little girl anymore.
Yet you keep acting like one.
Our way of life, keeping it alive is our duty.
Keeping ourselves alive is our duty.
I know that. And if Dad were here...
But he's not here. I am.
And despite Sokka being wrong numerous times, Katara still barely stands up for herself. But it's not until they reach the Cave of Two Lovers does Katara show an inkling of a backbone towards Sokka. See, when they're lost, Katara reasonably questions Sokka's directions. But instead of maturely considering Katara's criticisms, Sokka lashes out at her. And although Katara does stand up for herself for a brief moment, right after, she walks away to sit down and sulk.
Says the girl who fell for a terrorist.
That's not what happened.
You should have never talked to him.
You don't get to tell me who I can talk to.
And you don't get to just ignore me.
I can't if you're being an idiot.
Dad put me in
You're
trouble.
not Dad!
And when they return to the trail, Katara apologizes to Sokka, even though he was in the wrong. He was wrong about following the crystal lights. He was wrong about Sai not collaborating with Spies. He was wrong for accusing Katara for falling in love with a terrorist. And he was wrong for losing his temper on his sister. But after all of Sokka's wrongdoings, Katara is the one to apologize first. And also, before when Katara was trying to warn Aang and Sokka about Sai being a traitor, Sokka didn't believe her. And his reasoning for not believing Katara rests on the facts that he dislikes Jet for flirting with Katara and because Sai gave him confidence. So basically, he doesn't trust his own sister because of his fragile ego. Therefore, Sokka literally took the word of someone he just met over his younger sisters. Now, if these instances don't show just how awful of an older brother Sokka is to Katara, I don't know what will. And to make matters worse, during Sokka's illogical rant, Aang just sits there and doesn't support Katara either. Therefore, this scene shows how insignificant Katara's sentiments are to her own friends, as they don't take her seriously.
Katara. Katara, soak later, paddle now. Katara, soak later, paddle now.
And it further shows how Katara's relationship with Sokka presents the worst parts of her, as she's shown to be unconfident and insignificant. Now finally, the last on the list of Katara's unpleasant pairings is Master PAKKU. Now, when Katara meets PAKKU, he instructs her to meet with Yagoda to learn waterbending. But to Katara's surprise, she learns from Yagoda that she's not allowed to learn to fight. Now, the blunder of this scene is how it made Yagoda the one to inform Katara that she can't learn to fight instead of PAKKU. And the reason as to why this change is significant is because it forces Katara to aim her frustration at Yagoda instead of solely PAKKU. And Katara's angst towards Yagoda is bothersome because it doesn't add anything of value to Katara's story. Instead, Katara appears bratty for being upset at Yagoda for simply following the rules. Therefore, this scene is unproductive both in writing and logistically, as it makes Katara appear disrespectful and it makes Katara achieve nothing from her frustration. But back to PAKKU. When Katara finally confronts PAKKU, she argues that she should be allowed to fight because of her fighting experience against the Fire Nation. However, this is a weak argument as we've only seen Katara fight firebenders 3 times. The first time, Katara lost to Zuko. The second time, she had help from the Freedom Fighters. And the third time, she fought firebenders while running away. So, even if she says she fought firebenders, her argument is weak because we've barely seen her do so. But at the end of the 7th episode, Katara challenges PAKKU just like in the cartoon. However, this version of the fight lacks all the energy and attitude from the cartoon.
Is that all you got?
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Now, I don't know if Katara's actress is at fault or the directing, but instances like this and others, when executed so poorly, diminishes the gravitas of this scene. However, what's worse is that the writers removed the subplot of PAKKU's discoverance of Katara being Kanna's granddaughter, which was a meaningful subplot as it gave Katara and PAKKU some commonality after their feud, but also made PAKKU realize that his orthodoxy prevented him from finding real love. And by PAKKU realizing his mistake and seeing Katara inherit the necklace from the woman he loved, he becomes more open-minded about teaching Katara. But for some strange reason, this meaningful moment that added depth to Katara and PAKKU's relationship was removed, which ended up diluting their relationship in live action. Now, the final episode is crucial to Katara's character as it marks the climax of her journey. But unfortunately, this episode further emphasizes the destruction of her character. For starters, when Katara gathers the other women to confront PAKKU, I found it to be cringeworthy because the women just stand there motionlessly like NPCs while a 14-year-old is leading them to stand up for themselves. And although this scene was orchestrated to be empowering for Katara and the other women, instead, it accomplished the exact opposite by making the women seem like they have no self-determination. Following, Katara is met by children who are told by PAKKU to follow her instructions in battle. Now, if this was Katara from the cartoon, I'd understand, as she's been shown to be competent in combat. But this version of Katara is unproven. And in addition, the young warriors call Katara Master, which is another moment unearned because, as I previously mentioned, her competency in battle is questionable. Now, as the invasion continues, Katara has a rematch against Zuko. Initially, Katara gets the best of Zuko, which leads Zuko to infer that Katara's found a master, to which she replies,
at her.
And once again, another cringeworthy moment. Now, lines like these hurt Katara's character more than it helps her, because by her saying she's been the master all along, it gives the writers an easy way out to explain why she's improved so quickly at waterbending.
You are a natural. Thanks. I've gotten good at picking things up quickly.
Instead of gradually showing her become a proficient waterbender, like in the cartoon. Therefore, instead of gradually developing Katara's character by showing us instances of her getting better, overcoming challenges, and even learning from PAKKU, the writers conveniently include this line to excuse their laziness. But even when Katara's fight with Zuko continues, she loses her bending and gets knocked down by debris. And this is so pathetic, because you'd think after losing to Zuko in episode 2, Katara would finally have her get back. But no, she loses once again. And later, when Aang turns into a kaiju, Katara tries to reach him by yelling at the sea, which is stupid because Aang can't even hear her. Also, because Yue was the one to bring Aang back, it means Katara's demonstrative yelling was futile. But even worse, once the battle ends, Katara finds the kids that she was supposed to look after are dead. Therefore, after watching this whole episode, I have to ask, what is Katara's purpose? Her actions yielded no results, and she failed in all the responsibilities she was given throughout the entire invasion. But even after all those failures, PAKKU still calls Katara a master. But why? Why is Katara being praised? What did she do in this entire battle that would make her suitable to be called a master? She lost to Zuko, yelled at the ocean for no reason, and all the members of her troop died. Katara failed in every way possible. But for some reason, after all these colossal failures, we're supposed to feel that Katara has achieved some massive victory when she has done nothing to earn it. Now, to put it candidly, Netflix absolutely failed in adapting Katara as they completely diluted her of any semblance of her character. She lacks all the personality, liveliness, confidence, ferocity, and fearlessness associated with Katara from the cartoon. But to make matters worse, before the show aired, there was a big commotion regarding the showrunners wanting to remove the sexist implications from the cartoon. But ironically, in their failure to write Katara and other women in the series, the showrunners come across as sexist themselves. Therefore, Katara's whole character in Netflix's adaptation was a complete failure.